All right, guys, what is up? As you can see behind me, I have finally made some progress on my new room. We got the old tapestry up. We got some of the disc plates up on that side as well. So I'm pretty excited. You can also see my classic video games collection that I'm currently working on organizing. So we'll get that straightened out. But as always, my name is Justin, also known as Shit Just Works if you are new to the channel. If you're returning, welcome back. And today, we're going over, surprisingly enough, I haven't done this deck yet, Corina Control. We're going to do the whole, review the deck and then go into the two games as per usual. Real quick, though, I do want to give a shout out to our podcast. So myself and Rough House Plays both do the Game Wild podcast. So if you haven't already checked it out, the link is below in the description here. We do it every week. New episode rolls out 4 a.m. on Monday mornings for those sweet, sweet rides to work on Monday mornings. Said nobody ever. But enough of that. Let's get into this deck and how it works. All right, and before we get into this, as always, if you are new, hit that subscribe button so you can get the alerts. You got to turn on the bell for the alerts, though, that little bell button next to the subscribe button. Don't forget it. Whenever I release a video, new content, new decks, you'll get an alert. On top of that, in the description below will be the deck code. The deck code as well as the deck list on decks of Runeterra. So if you want to check it out, go ahead and copy pasta. So this version of Corina Control now has Vi. So since Vi has been released, she has been a powerhouse in this deck. To the point where people on my top 5 champions video, link also below in the description and a card up top, actually argued that she was the best champion in the game. Now, I can see why they would say that. Personally, I don't think she's great outside of this deck, really. I think this is really the only archetype that she works well in, but she does work well. She helps to bridge that gap between the mid game and the late game against aggro and mid-range decks. So definitely a very good tool in this deck right now. Beyond that, Corina Control, if you are not familiar with this deck archetype, what we are looking at is basically stalling out the game as long as possible to get good old Commander Lidros as well as Corina Veraza off in either, or well, you can't get them off in the same turn, back-to-back turns. So you play Commander Lidros, let's say the goal is really to get them down below 12. If they're at 12, you play Lidros, then they're at 6. Then you can play Corina. You can follow it up with things like Mystic Shot. You also usually end up doing some chip damage with the Elise as well as the Spiderlings floating around. Once you do get Commander Lidros on the field, he doesn't go away. And that's really the biggest thing with this deck is you're going to want to quickly draw into Commander Lidros. If you can play him on turn 9 and still have a pretty stable field to the point where you can play him, and because he sucks up most of your mana for that turn, or if not all of your mana, still be able to not get overrun by your opponent on the following turn, then you're in a good spot because he will stick on the board. Your opponent will need to deal with him at some point, and if they do, you get his effect off again. So generally speaking, if you get Lidros off twice, let's say they're at 18, they go down to 9, and then they go down to 5, I think, right? Let's round it up. Half, round it up. Yeah, 5. So then you should be able to play a Corina with a Mystic Shot for the game. I will say this used to play Get Excited for the sake of, also doing face damage towards the end of the game in that situation. Now it plays Gotcha for more control and removal. There's a lot of 3 health followers as well as champions floating around nowadays. It's a very big break point. So 3 damage is very, very crucial most of the time. Beyond that, we just have a lot of healing of the Nexus going on with the Withering Wail, Grasp of the Undying, and the staple for most Shadow Isle decks, Vile Feast. Elise is also a great early game threat as far as aggro is concerned. If your opponent is playing an aggressive deck, you can usually drop Elise, get some free spider tokens, and stall out the game a little bit by using the tokens as chump blockers. So that's pretty much the deck. It's really not that hard of a deck as far as the strategy is concerned. The late game is very difficult to navigate, though, and that's what we'll get into in both of these games. All right, so we got game 1 here, which, all right, I decided to do it. We have the mirror match. So exciting stuff here, right? I wanted to do this so that way you guys could get a sense of how to actually play the mirror match. It is a harder matchup to navigate, as well as some of the other, finisher decks out there, like, barrel control and stuff like that with Riptide Rex and just different variations of the same strategy. But ultimately, they all have the same goal, which is having some large finishers towards the end of the game to chunk down your opponent's health. So getting started here. So we have the Elise, we have the Brood Awakening. So the thing with this matchup is it feels really bad to just play anything ever, because you're both literally just sitting there waiting for turn 9, right? I mean, we play the Elise here in a second, but everybody knows that it's going to get killed by Grasp, most likely. If not this turn, then the next turn. He's not going to be spending any mana, most likely, unless he had the Elise as a follow-up. So instead, sorry, I got that wrong. Instead of Grasp, he has Gotcha because he drew it this turn. So that actually feels worse because, and this is a good point, with all these removal spells, right? You have 9 spells total that will heal your Nexus. You have 3 Vile Feast, 3 Grasp, and 3 Withering Wail. In this matchup, those are very, very important cards, and that is mainly because you are going to need to heal after your opponent plays Ladros. Now, that is the other critical thing. You will want to save your healing until after your opponent plays Ladros, and you'll see that here in a little bit. I'll probably get back to that. As I mentioned, though, with the Brood Awakening, I pretty much just have to play it to stay mana efficient and not have my hand clog up here. In all reality, you don't want to play too much in the mirror match. You're just waiting, like I said, right? You want to play things that draw. So Static Shock is something that you probably want to try to get off if possible. But when you do play stuff like Brood Awakening or any units or anything like that, it's going to get killed because both of you have the same units. And with that said, it's very little units. You have 3 Brood Awakening, you have the Frenzied Skitterers, you have the Elises, and then you have the Corinas and the Ladros. And the Corinas and the Ladros aren't coming out until later in the game. So really, you guys are just trading back and forth. With this is interesting that he did this, and I kind of want to explain real quick why this interaction happened. I went to Vile Feast proactively so that I could get a blocker for when he goes to attack on the next turn like he's doing right now. He actually negates that, so I do not get a blocker. It also gets an additional 1 damage attacker in there. The reason that this is good for me is because I still had the Withering Wail as a backup. So I actually got him to blow a Vile Feast thinking that he would be able to push extra damage through, when in all reality he couldn't because I had the Withering Wail to fall back on. So it's probably, if I were to guess, he's probably reading that by me playing the Vile Feast, I don't have a Withering Wail. So I essentially baited him into thinking that I don't have a Withering Wail. So, and again, I wouldn't even really want to play the Withering Wail there anyways because I want to save that 3 healing until I actually need it. So in this matchup, one of the key crappy situations is playing removal when you're at 20. Then you're just completely wasting the heal. So you can see he plays a Ladros, I play Ladros. I actually got it off first. I actually have 2 Ladros, which is entirely dictating, or not entirely, but mainly dictating how I play right here. So I'm actually deciding to kill his Ladros, even though he's going to be able to summon it again, because I know mine will live. And on top of that, I know I will have another one that I can play on the following turn. So with that said, I think I made a mistake here. I think I should have Mystic Shotted the Frenzied Skitterer after he committed to killing my Ladros so that I could keep my Ladros on the field. But he, fortunately, because he did that, is now at 8 mana. He cannot play his Ladros. So the mistake wasn't really punished that much. He plays the Corina kind of early. As far as I'm concerned, he gets 4, which is very uncommon to get the 4 damage off. But I do have the 6 damage Thermo Beam, which, again, in this matchup, Corina is really the only thing you want to Thermo Beam, unless you're forced into doing it something early game if you don't have anything to deal with an Elise for some reason. And don't mind me adjusting the volume there. Or using it even on a Ladros or a Vi. So I'm not really positive why he decided to play the Vi here, because it will die to my Ladros. So it's definitely a curious decision on his part. And this is also equally as curious. I'm not sure why he tries to bring this down to 1 health when the 1/1 token cannot block the Ladros. So I think this honestly might have won me the game right here. I basically just got a ton of removal and his Vi for trading my Ladros. So if you're watching this guy play, don't play like him. Don't ever do that. So anyways, I have to get the Ladros off again. He plays his first. I play mine second. So at this point, you're just trading Ladroses, which is very common at this point in the matchup. I have to be careful, though, because I am at 4 health. So, like, I have 2 Mystic Shots in my hand right now, which could kill him. But I'm almost positive he has some sort of healing, right? And you want to be tracking throughout the game how much healing your opponent's already played. So, did he? He already played a couple Vile Feasts, I believe. He already played a Withering Wail at the beginning of the game. So it gives you an idea of how much healing your opponent actually does have left. I actually luck out. So I don't even really need to go with the whole mind game thing because my Corina here, as you're going to see in a second, hits for 4 damage, as did his, but I promise you that is rare. 3 is more common. 2 sometimes happens. 1, 4, and 5 are usually pretty uncommon. I do hit the 4. Even if I hit 2 or I hit 3, because he only had the Vile Feast for heal, I had the 2 Mystic Shots as backup. And those Mystic Shots, like you saw in that game, are definitely things that you're going to want to hold for the late game to finish off your opponent, just like I did there. So the second game, what do we got here? Well, we have this new Overwhelm type Sejuani and Swain deck, which I have now seen a bit on the ladder, to be honest with you. I will say it's refreshing to see this instead of burn aggro, so I'm not going to complain. So this deck, you want to try to be very, very aggressive if possible, because their threats aren't going to come until a little bit later in the game, maybe turn 5 or turn 6. It's more of a mid-range type deck. He does actually get his 3-drop, which is very, very crucial for him, which is why I need to get rid of it right away. That would have put a lot of pressure on me. It does have 3 attack. If I do block it with a spider token, it's still going to do overwhelm damage. So that is something I need to get rid of right away. You do have to be watching out for that as you play in aggressive matchups. You cannot take damage early. Otherwise, or sorry, not even damage, just tempo. You cannot let them gain tempo early. So now, he has a Swain. Swain is also equally scary, and not just for his fearsome stats. Swain is interesting. He's definitely an interesting champion to have to play around, mainly because of his fearsome against this deck. As you can see, my spider tokens are only 2 attack, which is rough. They're not 3 attack. They cannot block. I need to get another Brood Awakening off before they can. So I am forced to have to Vengeance the Swain. That's not the best thing I wanted to do, trust me, especially since he played another one. But Vi is huge in this matchup. Vi is very, very big. As long as I can get her up to 6 attack, it will be able to deal with a lot of what my opponent's going to try to do aggro-wise. And the Brood Awakenings, as you can see here, are what allow me to kind of return the aggression. You always want to try to use the Brood Awakenings in all reality to chunk down your opponent's followers or champions in a matchup like this, right? If you're playing in another control matchup, you could actually just be the aggressor and win with the tokens and Elise, among other things, the Frenzied Skitterer. But in a mid-range matchup, you're not going to be able to be the aggressor. You don't have enough things early to mid-game to really out-beef your opponent, so to speak, with beefy minions. So you just want to chunk them down like I did the Swain, like I did that thing I can't remember. I think, Wolf Rider, just like the Hearthstone card, right? So you're going to want to chunk them down so that they can be taken out by units like you're seeing here. I can take out the Wolf Rider with the Spiderling. Now, that 5/8 that's rough. That's a very rough card to deal with. Kind of wish I had my Vengeance. So again, see, you don't want to use the Vengeance on the Swain. You'd probably want to use it on that 5/8 right now. But I am able to turn this around by beefing up my Vi to take out the Swain after my opponent buffed it up. Now, I am thinking, okay, I'm taking a lot of damage. The Leviathan is going to end up doing 3 more at the beginning of the turn, as you see here. But now my Vi is going to be able to take care of the Leviathan if I need to. However, I have Ladros. And this is why it is so important to draw Ladros and play him on turn 9. If you can get Ladros off on turn 9 and you're not super far behind on tempo, like I was, you'll be able to win the game. All right, guys, that is it for the Corina control deck. I know it's another meta deck. I am working on cooking up some crazy deck ideas. I've been toying around with Poros lately. I really want Aurora Borealis to work like really bad. So that's next on the list, I believe. So we'll see what happens. But until next time, everybody stay healthy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you, and peace out.